Welcome to Painting with Janine Liza. Materials: 140 pound weight watercolour paper taped to a board, water, a palette, paper towel and 2 brushes, size 3 round and 3/4 inch flat with acrylic hairs. We'll be using watercolour paints from the tube. A sweet pea-sized drop of cerulean blue, rose, lemon yellow and black. In this video we're going to be doing a painting that is inspired by this photograph of a sunrise. Now the printer wasn't working too well, so this is a little smudged here. However, this will all be black silhouette anyway, so it'll be fine. And I'm going to show you a painting that I did yesterday of this, inspired by that sunrise right here. And today in a live video I painted this one. Now during the live video I had to have a backup sort of backdrop painted so that I could show the step of doing the background and then the silhouette on the dry background that had been done the day before. So we're going to give this a try. Every time you try to paint a background or you do a background in the technique that we're going to be using, it turns out differently. We're going to be using a wet into wet technique, which is to apply paint to the paper that has a layer of water or paint already on and still wet. This technique combined with tipping is a method of blending that appears natural. I've got a note here I wrote too. We can give the paint some direction, but not being able to completely control what it does is part of the charm of the wet into wet technique. It is always fascinating to see how it turns out. Here are 2 examples of how the wet into wet technique can turn out on the canvas. There was two samples of what I tried today. One is like this. Another turned out like this. I was aiming for this type of effect. But it doesn't always go the way you plan, and that's okay because the paint gives you a little something you didn't expect. Sometimes it can surprise you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put water in the paint. We need a lot of water, so say 5:1 for the blue and the pink, 5 water, 1 paint, and 3:1 for the yellow, and 1 equal amount of water to the black paint in the middle there. I'm going to start with the yellow paint stirring, then I'm going to move to the pink and the blue, and make sure I carefully wash my brush in between each. I'm going to make sure I get all the lumps out of the paint. I'm using concentrated watercolor paint from tubes, which is the paint that I prefer to use. And then the blue. When I first started out though, I really enjoyed the dry palettes. A little dry palette to carry around with me to do like landscape paintings and plein air painting. And the black I'll leave till later. So the wet and wet technique is to get water. For this one I'm using water as a first wash, and just cover the surface very gently covering all of the paper with the water. You may not be able to see it all unless you tip your board. And then you can see where you've missed patches or put a little too much. And if there is too much, it'll be puddling and running. So what you want to do is get some tissue and let it run down onto the tissue. So the paper's just coated, the pores are filled with liquid, but it's not puddling. There we go. Next, we want to think about where we're going to place the paint to get the effect we want. I think tipping the board in slightly diagonal manner might give us the effect we're looking for. So I'm going to aim the paint a little because I kind of want some lines going this way and go like that. Wow, look how that just bursts into the water. It's beautiful. You don't need to rub the paint on. Just gently placing it on the paper and letting it move is sufficient. And next we're going to go to the pink paint and get that moving into the blue a little, but not tipping the board too far because we want to make sure that it doesn't run too far into that blue. It's just a sunrise, it's just coming up, and we want to have that lovely effect. Oh, I gotta get this washed up good before I move to the yellow. Let's have a look. There's some yellow. Okay, I'm liking the way this one's turning out so far. Sometimes I'll have to do 3 or 4 of these to get the effect I'm looking for. Sometimes it happens the first time around. Now, let's do this and drain some of the liquid that's coming off the canvas, and then you want to tip it in the direction you want the sky to move. A little bit that way, a little bit that way, and then drain all the excess off. See how the yellow is just bursting into the pink there? It's beautiful. I'm going to come back again. Maybe I won't try to get it too close to the original design, the original kind of layout of the sky. I could go up there a little more. There seems to be a little extra paint to play with, so we'll just see where this goes. This is where the paint starts doing its own thing, and you just kind of see where it goes. Okay, and then we'll come back a little bit. There you go. So some of that pink has moved up into the blue. And now when this settles down after it dries, it should have a really natural sort of blended effect. There we go. You know what? I really like that. I think we did a first time success thing here. There we go. I'm just going to drain all that paint along the tape line to get that there. Fantastic. I'm happy with that. So now you don't have any excess puddles or anything. We've tipped all the extra paint off the edges. If we do see a little puddle forming, you can just tip again and drain it. And I am just going to give this about 30 to 40 minutes to dry. When it's dry flat, I'm going to come back and we're going to do the silhouettes. This time will seem like a second in the video, but so you'll probably want to pause here, give your background time to dry, and then unpause and we'll continue together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start on the silhouettes. I'm just going to stir the black paint. It doesn't need any extra water because it still had that water I put in earlier. And give it a good stir. So now I'm going to grab one of the paintings that I did earlier and perhaps use it as a bit of a guide. So you could be looking at that too while you're doing your painting and following along. So simply going to add the black now in the silhouettes, And I'm going to drain the brush a little on the metal, like the metal part of the brush on the tissue, just to get a little bit of the wet out, but keep the paint in. I'm knocking my other brush around. I'm going to start with the little roof down here, doing as straight a line as I can. Straighten it out and adjust it as you like, because it's all going to be the same here. You can make it a little bit of a bigger roof, or, you know, if you need to, because you need to keep adjusting it. Here we go. Just put a little angle here. And then a little bit just kind of went up there, didn't it? So now I can just take that and just make the roof a little larger, just to compensate for the little bit of a line that went up there. Again, I'm just going to fill this in as well. Here we go, there's the rooftop. And we're going to put in these evergreens that are, I think they're emerald pine. I think they are. I have a few in my backyard, and they're very pretty. We'll just start with these vertical lines, and then we'll add some more detail. This is the top of the trees. I guess these trees are just very tall. So just 3 lines here, and then I'm going to stipple the paint by just pressing the brush about a quarter of the brush into the paper to get a smudge. This is called stippling, just kind of dotting it on, pressing the brush in a little. But you don't want to flatten the whole brush into the paper. It makes a big splat, so we're just going for little dots. And that creates texture. You've got some areas that will puddle and it will be darker, and some that will spread a little more and be lighter, so it creates texture as well. Here we go. There's one, and they'll just kind of blend into each other a little as well, because they're so close to each other. Just try to stop the board from rattling a little. I did a bit of a big smudge there, but that's okay. It's where the trees blend together. There we go. All right, so let's have a look at this. Now we want to move on to these little bit of foliage here, So I'm going to do all of the shrubbery looking texture over here, and just do this first before I put in these deciduous trees. And you can tell that it is still, well, it is officially spring now, I suppose, today. But we don't have any leaves on the trees yet, so not on the deciduous trees that I can see, not around where I am. So you can see all those tiny little branches. Oops. Now for these, I am actually pressing just a tiny bit harder on the brush because it's creating larger smudges. They don't need to be as small as the little bits on these trees. Now each painting is going to turn out slightly different, so it's fine. It's silhouettes, and it just sort of gives the hint of what is there. And I guess I'll put another evergreen here as I've done there. So just another line, and then the little dots, little stippling. There we go. This one looks pretty happy. Okay, so now I'm going to do these other trees here, and I'm going to start now. Some people find this tricky, but if you just think of these trees as a whole bunch of the letter Y, okay, so you've got like your initial trunk that comes up, and then it splits off. And then you follow that with your brush very carefully with the tip of your brush. You want to be careful not to press too hard on the paper because you want the fine lines. And you just run off into another direction. Now I do find trees to be a lot of fun because it's like a puzzle almost. You're creating it as you go, and you decide when it's finished. So you just do your larger branches. Well, I do my larger branches first. You need to have your larger branches on there to sort of be a guide for all the others. So there's 4 main branches. They don't have to be so organized. I could have one that does this, and that could be in the back or even in the front, and another. Okay, and then because it's a silhouette, you know, you can do this, and your imagination will decide where those branches are, whether they're closer or further away. Each branch that is coming off of a main branch will be a little finer, a little thinner than the branch that it is coming off of. This one looks pretty thick there, so I'm going to have to make that into more of a main branch. There we go. See how I saved that? I pressed a little too hard there, and I even like that little crooked bit right there, that corner. It's like a little knot in the tree, or a little bit that comes out. I like that. I do like to do curved branches, however, having a little bit of a sharp edge or a knot sticking out or a stub where there would be a branch but there isn't one. It's okay too. It all looks cool. Every tree is unique, and it's really up to artistic license as well how you want to do it. So as you see, as I create more and more Y shapes, I've got a more natural looking tree. Now this looks a bit top heavy, doesn't it? So what I like to do is go back down and make the trunk thicker so that it gives the illusion that it is able to support that larger top there. See? And then I want to very delicately touch the paper to get the finer branches coming off of these little ones. So again, you're going to try and get some more branches on there. And the more you put on, the more believable it is as a tree. I mean, it's quite crazy how many branches they have. Let me have a look at that photograph again. Look at that. Really, it's a cluster. It's so close together that, I mean, we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because I want to have it look like you really enjoy the look of the branches spread out like that. But yeah, you can do it in clusters too. I would probably layer it if I was going to do that. like let a layer of branches dry and then come back and apply another layer of branches, and then you would end up with those nice clusters of branches. I'm afraid my hand might be covering what I'm doing because the camera is directly above, so I'll try to tilt my hand a little bit to the side so you can see a little better. Just randomly picking a branch and adding more to it. There's one. See, this looks different from this one. Every tree looks different. And then I can stick another tree on this side here. Now you could run with this and do any kind of silhouettes on here you like. You know, you could have a farmer's field with a farmer with his little sheepdog and a little tree beside, or it could be a city scene. You could do anything you like. This was the scene that I photographed and I really liked it, and I thought, that is inspiring. Those colors are so beautiful. Here, now I'm just getting carried away with the thick branches. Here we go. And I want to show that this is supporting this. I'll do this here, and then run this up like this. My brush is a little cheeky. It doesn't seem to have the fine point on it of some of the brushes I've used, and I don't feel like switching out right now because I'm on a roll. So I've got a cheeky brush and a stubborn painter. I'm just going to try to not to press on the paper too much so I can get those finer branches. This one looks like it needs another branch going up. This is a very, very tall tree. If this sunrise is over the top of the houses. You know what I realized I haven't put in was the other house with the little chimney. I think I'll do it right here. So I'll just transform this foliage here. Just put a line, and then I can just, the foliage can still be there, but put a little chimney back here. Here we go. And I'm going to water down a little bit of the black to make a bit of gray, just a drop of water on my brush into that black there. And then I'm going to paint some distant trees, very little ones, in the gray. Just the tips of some deciduous trees back here. And there we go. Here. And over here. And then I'm going to, I should wait till that dries, and then when the gray dries, I'm just going to do this because I'm doing a demonstration. I'm almost out here anyway, and we're almost done. When it dries, you can then take the black paint and do some very fine lines. It just gives a little bit of a layered effect. Do some very fine lines on top of that. I'll just bring that up to show you. So you have two layers. And it just adds a little texture and looks interesting. And I like that. You can add some tiny branches too. Here we go, little tiny branches. Well, this brush is doing all right now. There we go. And that's it. You've got your silhouettes. Now you can of course add as many more branches as you like. You can keep adding to them. I might just have enough black paint to sign my painting. Ready? Janine, Liza. Okay, so that's the end of this video, and I will go and look for some other inspiration to make my next class. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Thank you for viewing it and or trying it out. I look forward to sharing more projects with you as you continue in these painting classes.